Welcome back to another video, and today we got our Week 15 college football top 25 rankings, and we've got a lot of things to talk about because the last time I made one of these, it was pre-recorded, so I haven't talked about the results from the past 2 weeks. So we got huge rivalry results, rivalry week upsets to talk about, and then we'll touch on the previous, 2 weeks ago a little bit, and then also make our conference championship game predictions. But real quick, if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe. We got loads of content. College basketball every Monday, college football every Tuesday, NFL every Wednesday, and NBA every Thursday. So, with all that being said, make sure you go on there, subscribe if you are new. Click that notification bell to make sure you don't miss whenever we upload another video, and like this video if you enjoy. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the rankings. And starting off with our number 25 team, I'll have Missouri move back into the rankings. I mean, I don't know. They're 9-3. Don't really have an impressive win. I mean, they beat some decent teams. They beat Arkansas. They beat Auburn, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. I don't know. I mean, with Missouri, there's not a lot of other teams that I feel like I could rank. Maybe like Memphis, but besides Memphis, maybe Louisville. But Louisville has 4 losses. I don't know. With Missouri, though, definitely a disappointing season. I mean, they did win 3 of their last 4, but I don't know. This was a team I predicted to make the playoffs coming into the season. Now, that was preseason. But, I mean, this was a team where I expected them to, at worst, lose 2 games. And those 2 games I thought could be the road Texas A&M game and the road Alabama game. But I thought, even with them being 10-2, I thought they would make the playoffs. I forget if I actually picked them to lose against A&M. I'm not sure, but man, Brady Cook just didn't look the same as he did last year. Missouri, definitely a disappointing season. They finish at 9-3. Moving on over to number 24, another pretty disappointing season, especially with them losing 3 of their last 4. I mean, losing at Auburn, I said 2 weeks ago this could be a trap game. I could see them losing. They did lose. And then this past week, they lose in the rivalry must-win game against Texas to keep their season alive. If they would have won that game, they would have been 9-3. They would have been playing Georgia in the SEC championship game. But they did lose, so their season is over besides the bowl game, but it's not. I mean, I guess it could still be a decent bowl game, but it's not, a playoff game like they would have hoped. And I mean, yeah, I mean, they lost week 1, but they went on that 7-game winning streak and really got everyone back on the A&M train, and then dropped 3 of their last 4. So Texas A&M really up and down season here. It's unfortunate the way they finished, and definitely probably a disappointing season to some Aggie fans. But there was a point in time where they were fringe top 10, I believe. Maybe even top 10. I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, their best win is against probably Missouri, who hasn't looked great. Besides that, it might be LSU, who also doesn't look great. So A&M, rough way to finish the season, like I said. Moving on to number 23, it's going to be Army. They lost in blowout fashion to Notre Dame. I kind of expected that. They did beat UTSA, though. They're at 10-1 right now, and going into their conference championship game, there's probably not a chance for them to make the playoffs at this point. I mean, Tulane is unranked. Whoever wins this will most likely be behind Boise State or UNLV if UNLV does pull off the upset, along with the Big 12 champion. So I don't think there's really any chance for either of these teams to get in. I think Tulane actually wins in dominant fashion. They've actually played some quality teams and kept it close. Army, the one team they've played, they got blown out by. I don't know. I just don't think Army's way of playing an offense can really keep up with Tulane's. But yeah, the Army Navy game should be pretty fun this year. The following week, number 22, I have Illinois. Definitely, I would consider this a win of a season. I mean, they beat Michigan. They beat Kansas. They went into Lincoln and beat Nebraska. They beat their rivals, Northwestern. They got a tough road win against Rutgers. The only losses came to Penn State and Oregon, both on the road, and then of course Minnesota. There's a real world. Illinois is 10-2. I mean, could you imagine that? I mean, Illinois would be all the way near the top 15. Probably wouldn't make the playoffs, but that would definitely be a storyline. Definitely a huge win of a season though for the Illini. Number 21, Syracuse. Huge, huge win against Miami. I said this. Syracuse could win this game. I could actually see it. I picked Miami to win. But I've been saying this. Miami's defensive struggles have to catch up to them at some point. They've been, you know, sneaking by these bad teams in the ACC, and I said this. I mean, it has to catch up to them, and we saw that they lost 2 of their last 3 games. Um, Syracuse, kind of an up and down season. I mean, Kyle McCord comes in. They bring in a lot of transfers. That Pitt game was terrible. Both those teams were ranked at that point. They did go into UNLV and get a ranked win though. That looks like a pretty good win now. Obviously, they beat Miami just this past week. They did lose to Boston College. They did lose to Stanford way early in the season. That looks like a pretty bad loss. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Syracuse has some bright spots on this resume. Has some pretty low spots as well though. So I don't know. Syracuse definitely a huge win though against Miami. That's a way to move your program forward. Love their coach, by the way. Number 20, Colorado. A lot of Colorado fans are going to say and consider this season a loss, a disappointment. I want you guys to remember, coming into the season, I predicted Colorado to go 6-6. Last year, by the way, they were 4-8. They started off 4-0. They lost 8 straight to finish the season. Coming into the season, I thought they'd make a bowl game. I thought just narrowly, though. I thought they'd go 6-6. Colorado, with 10 games into the season, had a real chance to get into the playoffs. Now, they lost to Kansas on the road, who was red hot to end the season. And I thought that game was 50-50. They did lose. They won't be playing in the Big 12 championship, but they were in a four-way tie. I mean, they were as close as you can get without really making it to the playoffs. So with Colorado, like I said, a lot of Buffaloes fans are going to call this a disappointment, and maybe you could say the end of the season was disappointing. I mean, after that Kansas State loss, they were on a roll. They were on a tear. They finished off the season strong. I will say Oklahoma State, very disappointing season. A lot of these teams in the Big 12. Kansas State, disappointment. Utah, Arizona, Kansas as well. Oklahoma State. I mean, all those teams I thought were the cream of the crop in this conference. And it ended up being BYU, Arizona State, Colorado, and Iowa State. The only team I thought would be decent out of those four was Iowa State, but I think I had them going 8-4. So that is pretty crazy to think about. But yeah, Colorado, this is definitely a win of a season. I mean, you've seen the recruits coming in now. Colorado's got a bright future ahead of them, I'll say that. Number 19, UNLV, the first, I believe, conference championship game that actually matters, because I know I predicted Armies, but the American one doesn't really matter. But with UNLV, their only losses are to Syracuse and Boise State, both ranked teams. They have a win on the road against Kansas. That looks pretty good now. They also have wins against Houston, who is somewhat of a decent team. I mean, they're a Power 4 team at the very least. But in this game, they're getting a rematch against the Broncos, who beat them about 2 months ago now, I think it was. They're getting a huge rematch. And the winner of this game is going to be in the playoffs. Like I said, the American champion will not get in over these teams. Now, if UNLV wins, they'll probably get in as the 12. I think the Big 12 champ would be the 4. If Boise State wins, Boise State can get a first-round bye in the playoffs. I don't think anybody expected that. In this game, I think, here's the thing. Normally, when two good teams play each other, the second time around, the team who lost the first time ends up winning just because they know what they did wrong, how to fix it. And last game was a very close game. The problem is, this is in Boise, on the blue turf. Boise's playing. I mean, they've been in this playoff picture all season. I think Genti goes absolutely nuclear in this one. He's trying to get the Heisman still. This is going to be a very fun game. It's going to be a very slept on game. This is going to be a very exciting Mountain West Championship, 10-2 versus 11-1. I think Boise wins though. I think the fact that it's at home is the difference maker. I mean, like I said, when two good teams play each other, usually they split. But the problem is Boise State went into Vegas and beat UNLV the first time around. Now UNLV has to go into Boise, and that crowd is one of the is a that place is a very tough place to play. So I think Boise wins. I think with Ashton Genty, they get it done. But this is going to be a very fun game. I think it's going to be close as well. Number 18, I have Clemson moving down 4 after their South Carolina loss. And yes, this could be, considered disappointing among the fan base. You lose to your rivals. Don't want to see that. But Clemson, with Miami's loss, they get bumped into the ACC championship game. And there's a very real chance they beat SMU and get in to the playoffs. Not only is there a very real chance that it happens, I actually think it will happen. I think with the talent that Clemson has and the coaching, I trust this program more than SMU at this point. Now, SMU, I'll say, has looked like the better team. SMU's 11-1. Their only loss is to BYU. Clemson has lost to Louisville. They got blown out by Georgia. They lost to South Carolina just recently. But they looked very solid in that game against a hot South Carolina team. I know SMU is rolling right now. I don't know. I think Dabo Swinney cooks something up. I think they can squeak out a win. I think it's going to be important for Cade Klubnik not to turn over the ball. If he turns over the ball, they're not going to win. Because I think they're going to need to put up some points. So we will see. In big games, Clemson's offense has kind of crumbled. I mean, you've seen that in the past in their 3 losses. I mean, only 14 against South Carolina, 3 against Georgia, and then 21 against Louisville, but that was also because they scored a touchdown last second. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I originally had SMU. Right before I recorded this, I picked Clemson, and I kind of want to change it back to SMU. I don't know. This one's very 50-50. I'm going to stick with it just because of the coaching. I don't feel great about it, though. That one, I mean, there's going to be some chaos, I feel like. I feel like somebody's going to get upset. I personally think that's going to be the most likely one. I mean, if the SEC and the Big Ten, whoever wins that, I don't know if I consider that upset. I don't know. I think Clemson gets it done, though. BYU here at 17, moving up 1. Again, this is kind of the Colorado situation. You could say it's disappointing how they finished the season. But, I mean, they started out 9-0. I know they lost 2 of their last 3. And it sucks for them that they got to miss out on the Big 12 championship after they've been in the playoff picture for really this whole year. But nobody expected them to go 10-2. They're going to get a pretty good bowl game. Good on BYU. They also beat SMU on the road, which didn't look like a crazy win at the time. But now that is a top 10 win on the road, so that's very impressive. Good on BYU for having a great season. Iowa State here at 16. They beat Kansas State last week. I thought Kansas State might win that game. They also beat Utah on the road. I also thought Utah had a shot there. Iowa State started off the season 7-0. They were the hot team in the Big 12 for a while. Then they lost 2 games there against Texas Tech and Kansas. Kind of started Kansas's just absolutely chaos that the Jayhawks made there with that loss in the Big 12. And then since then, though, they've won 3 games in a row against decent teams. They're at 10-2. People kind of forgot about the Cyclones. Now they're sitting with a spot in the Big 12 championship where if they win, they get into the playoffs. So the Cyclones kind of salvaged their season here at the end with losses, with BYU losing a couple, Colorado dropping one. Iowa State gets in, but the problem is they're going to have to play a red-hot Arizona State team who has been on a tear recently. I think this game is going to be very fun, maybe the most fun conference championship game. Just I mean, I think this has a chance to be a high-scoring game. Two 10-2 teams that have been very solid this season. Rocco Beck's thrown for over 3,000 passing yards for Iowa State. Let's look at Arizona State, though. Um, Sam Levitt looks really good. I mean, these are two guys. Scatabo rushing the ball. He's rushed for 1,400 yards almost. This is two very good teams. I'm going to go with the hotter team, though. I think Arizona State gets it done. They're favored by two. This is arguably the most 50-50 game. I mean, in the college football playoff rankings, this is 16 versus 15. This could definitely go either way, but this will likely be for a spot in the playoffs as the 12 seed unless Boise State loses. So they're going to have whoever wins this game is going to have a very tough matchup first round, but obviously you want to win your conference and get a shot to play in the playoffs. Number 15, though, I have Miami moving down 7. And now I'm not going to make the same argument for Colorado and BYU as I did Miami because, with them, I've been saying you could say this is disappointing, but they exceeded expectations greatly. With Miami, I thought Miami would go 11-1 in the regular season, and I thought they would lose to Florida State in the ACC championship game. What a miss of a prediction there. I thought Florida State was going to win the ACC this year. They barely won. They didn't. They didn't even win 3 games. With Miami though, this is. I'll give you this. This is a disappointment. Everybody thought this could be Miami's year to win the ACC, and it looked like that for the majority of the season. But they lose 2 of their last 3 to unranked opponents. Now Syracuse is ranked now. With Miami, though, they don't have a rank to win. Their best one is probably at Louisville, maybe at Florida. Their losses aren't great. I mean, the defense just looks bad. I've been saying this, though. I've been saying the defensive problems are going to catch up with them. They can't just keep sneaking by with their offense. And yeah, it finally did. They couldn't get a stop against Syracuse. Syracuse chewed the last 5-6 minutes of the game away because the defense couldn't get one stop. And yeah, Miami falls outside of the playoff picture in the college football playoff rankings. They are right there. They're, I believe, the first team out right now. Me personally, I don't know how you can put Miami ahead of Ole Miss and South Carolina. I know they have one less loss, but if you're gonna put Alabama ahead of Miami, I feel like you got to put Ole Miss and South Carolina too. So that's what I did personally. That's why I have Miami. I've been a little bit lower on Miami though than the committee this whole season. But yeah, this is definitely a disappointment. They don't even get a chance to make the ACC championship game, so their playoff hopes are almost zero at this point. If they were ranked ahead of Bama, there would be a slight chance. But like I said, they're the first team out. I don't even know if it's possible for them to get in at this point. But ultimately, we will see. I mean, we've seen crazier things. Number 14, Arizona State. We talked about them. I mean, look at this win streak. 5 wins in a row. They've won 7 of their last 8. Yeah, they took down Kansas State, then they took down BYU, then they hammered their rivals, Arizona. So those are 2 ranked wins and then a rivalry win to finish out the season. Arizona State is probably the hottest team in the country right now. And they go into this Big 12 championship game riding all this momentum. Like I said, I think this is going to be the most fun conference championship game, but I do think the Sun Devils get it done. With the way they've been playing, it's hard for me not to pick them. I picked BYU to beat them. Then I actually picked Arizona to beat them, but I did say in the, Week 13 rankings video, I said if Arizona State beat BYU, then I'd pick Arizona State to beat Arizona. Now, they did beat BYU, so that would have changed my prediction. But yeah, last week video, I did have Arizona State losing to Arizona because I thought BYU would win. I was wrong. Arizona State looks like a great team, and I think they win against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. I just think it comes down to who makes the mistake and with the way they've been playing, it's hard for me not to pick them. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Sun Devils. Number 13, South Carolina. They have a strong argument, I would say, to get into the playoffs. You look at their wins; they blew out Texas A&M. They have a ranked win over Missouri, a road win against Vanderbilt, who is decent, I guess, um, on the road. And then they went into Clemson and just beat them. Clemson's going to have a chance to be a playoff team. And not to mention, they've won 6 in a row. They're arguably them and Arizona State are the two hottest teams right now. Lenora Sellers looks like a absolute spark plug at quarterback. He looks great, and I will say though, South Carolina has all this going for them, and a lot of this is probably going to be recency bias. I don't know if I want to call it recency bias, but you get what I'm saying. With the way they've been playing recently, it's hard to say that they're not playing like a top 20. With the way they've been playing recently, it's hard for me to say that they're not playing like a top 12 team right now. The problem is they lost to Alabama and Ole Miss, who are both right there on the bubble with them. So I think that's probably where they don't get in, unfortunately. But South Carolina, man, they made a great push here, beating A&M, beating Vanderbilt, who I think was ranked when they played that game, beating Missouri, beating Clemson. I mean, those are 3 or 4 ranked wins to finish out the season. That's a great way to end, and they probably should have beat Alabama on the road. I've been saying that, but they also probably should beat LSU. There's a world where South Carolina is 11-1, playing in the SEC championship game, but we do not live in that world. But that would be a great world to live in. But yeah, South Carolina, good on them. Number 12, Ole Miss. Unfortunately for Ole Miss, I don't think they get in. They're probably behind Alabama at this point. You look at their losses, they have 3 unranked losses. Yes, they beat Georgia, but besides that, I actually, never mind. I take that back. They did go into South Carolina and dominate. So they have 2 ranked wins, but 3 unranked losses. Now let's move over and look at Alabama. They have 2 unranked losses, and 2 ranked wins. 3 ranked wins. So Alabama has less unranked losses. They have more ranked wins. I think it's hard for me to say that Alabama does not deserve to be ahead of Ole Miss. The argument, I guess you could say, is Ole Miss dominated Georgia. Alabama did dominate Georgia for a half, but they almost blew the game in the second half. Also, you could make the argument that Ole Miss is playing better right now, but I don't know. Both these teams did lose. Ole Miss lost at Florida in a close game. Alabama got blown out at Oklahoma. You could argue Florida's better than Oklahoma. That's obviously a tough environment to play in, and and Ole Miss was closer. But that's a lot of workaround ways. When you look at the simple, you know, basis here, I think it's hard for me not to say Alabama's ahead of Ole Miss right now, and I think they probably finish ahead of Ole Miss as well. Bama's in a really good spot unless Clemson beats SMU, because then SMU probably gets in over them. At least I would put them ahead of Alabama. Will the committee do that? That will be interesting. If Clemson beats SMU and SMU drops their second loss of the game or their second loss of the season, will the committee value an 11-2 SMU team over a 9-3 Alabama? I would imagine so. I'd hope so because they deserve it more. But we'll see. But yeah, Alabama really needs just these teams to take care of business and win, because Alabama is that first team in right now, at least in the committee's eyes. With Boise State, they finished 11-1. We've talked about this game. I think they win in a very close game against UNLV. I think they beat them a second time this year. Their only loss is a 3-point loss at the number 1 team in the country. Boise State's rolling. Their offense looks legit. Ashton Jeanty. Will he win the Heisman? I don't know. I don't think so unless he goes absolutely nuclear. against UNLV, which I think could happen. But Travis Hunter looks like the odds-on favorite right now. But I do think Boise State wins, and I think Boise State with a win here secures a first-round bye. Crazy. Nobody thought this would happen. Number 9 of Indiana. With Ole Miss. Now, we'll talk about this. They got blown out at Ohio State. I said this was a possibility. It happened. The kicker for Indiana is Ole Miss and Alabama both lost that same week as them. So they dropped to 3 losses. I think at this point, Indiana's a very safe bet to be in the playoffs. So good for Indiana for getting in 11-1. Great season. We'll see what they can do in the playoffs. Number 8, SMU. We talked about this. Is there a world where SMU, if they lose, they get left out? I don't think so, but I think it's a slight chance. I do think they lose. I think Clemson gets them. I think coaching-wise, I trust Dabo Swinney. He's won a national title. And I mean the rosters, Clemson just talent for talent has more. Sometimes that's enough. I think Clemson wins. If SMU does lose, though, I think there's a really good chance they still get in over Alabama. So if you're an Alabama fan, you're looking at this like SMU. This is a must-win game for you if you're an Alabama fan. If you are an Alabama fan, you are an SMU fan this week because if Clemson wins, there's a good chance the Crimson Tide get left out. But moving on to number 7, Tennessee, 10-2. They're safely in at this point. There's no concern for them at all. I mean, I think these top 7 teams are pretty safely in. I would say Indiana's probably safely in as well. But yeah, Tennessee's in. They got 2 losses. They have a win over Alabama, who has one of those bubble teams. Their only losses are to Georgia on the road, and then Arkansas is a bad loss. But a lot of teams on the bubble have bad losses. Tennessee has one less overall loss as well, only 2 losses. Tennessee's safely in. The argument for Tennessee, the one talking point is, can they somehow get a first-round home game? I don't think so. I think Tennessee needed to be ranked ahead of Ohio State this week, and the committee ranked Ohio State ahead. It's looking like that's going to be the 8-9 matchup. So that should be a fun game. But, yeah, that was definitely the thing where I was watching. Would Ohio State get ranked behind Tennessee? Would Tennessee get the home game? They ultimately chose Ohio State to get the home game. And that's where I have Ohio State at number 6. Let's talk about this. Obviously, as many of you may know, I'm an Ohio State fan, and this is a very bad loss. This was a game where Ohio State was 20.5-point favorites. They'd lost 3 years in a row. The mindset in Columbus was natty or bust. I think that goes to show they expected to win this game. Michigan going into this game was 6-5. Had not, had a quarterback for the majority of this season. And it was in Columbus. I don't know where to start. I mean, well, we can start with the obvious. Let's start with the players. Will Howard did not have a good day. He threw 2 picks. He really didn't help out the offense as much as, you would like him to. And I think with the picks, this ultimately affected the coaching staff and the play calling, which a lot of people are blaming. And I'm blaming too. I think Ryan Day and Chip Kelly are deserving of the blame. They didn't coach a very good game. This was one of the worst play calling I've ever seen. I mean, I don't understand. Will Howard throws a pick to Michigan in the inside their own 20-yard line. Michigan throws a pick right after Caleb Downs gets the interception. Ohio State gets the ball in the red zone. They run the ball 3 times, get 2 yards, and settle for a field goal. And then they missed a field goal. That's another thing. Their kicker, Fielding, missed 2 field goals. If he makes those two, Ohio State wins. Um, I did expect Michigan to cover the spread. I still expected Ohio State to win by 2 scores at minimum. Um, I'm not. There's no excuse here. This is just. This is. I've been seeing people saying this is the worst loss in this rivalry. I mean, I don't understand how you're Ohio State and you let Michigan get exactly what they want from this game. You let them have a low scoring, time of possession, run the ball, physical battle. I mean, that is exactly what Michigan wanted. Their coaches said before the game if it's a 1 score game going into the fourth quarter, they believe they would win that game. Guess what? It was 10-10 going into the fourth quarter. And guess what happened? Michigan won. Um, if you're Ohio State, I know Will Howard threw 2 picks, but you got to trust him a little bit more. I mean, that is your starting quarterback. You got to let him throw the ball a little to the receivers. You have the best receiving core in the country. I know you have the best running back room in the country as well, but with a banged up offensive line against probably the best D line in the country in Michigan, you can't expect to run the ball up the middle every single play. I mean they got scared. They felt like they couldn't trust Will Howard. You can see that if you watch the game. I watched the game twice when it was live and then one more before this. It's ridiculous. How do you not throw the ball to the best receivers in the country? Um, I mean, Ohio State got 10 plays of offense in the fourth quarter. That is just terrible. The one silver lining, at least the defense is probably the best defense in the country. I will say there's another silver lining. There's actually a couple now that I think about it. But the thing is, Ohio State is still going to be one of the favorites to win the national championship. They shouldn't be the favorite at this point after that loss. They were the favorite going into this game. Um, they shouldn't be anymore. They miss out on a Big Ten championship. Let me stop hating though. I can go in depth for 30 minutes straight about this. I'm gonna keep it simple. Let's look at the positives. There's not much. You lose 4 years in a row. We're not. I'm done talking about this game. I will say, after they lost to Oregon, the problem was the defense. Look at their last 6 games of the year. 17 points allowed. A top 5 road matchup, 13 points allowed. 0, 7, 15 against another top 5 team, and then 13. Since the Oregon game, and besides the Oregon game, the defense has not allowed over 20 points in a game this year. The defense since the Oregon game has been way more aggressive. They've fixed the defense because going into the Oregon game, they hadn't played anyone. Coming out of the Oregon game, I was worried about the defense. I was going into that game, I thought the defense was the strong suit. Coming out, I was like, okay, the offense is good. We got to fix the defense. In these past 6 games, I will say they have fixed the defense, and the defense has looked like the best in the country. Coming out of the Michigan game, now I'm concerned about the offense. They have the playmakers to do so. I think it's on Will Howard. I think he knows that. I think he has to play better. And I think the coaches have to give him more opportunities. They have to trust him a little more. They also have to give him some better play calls. I think there's a chance. I'm not gonna. You could call me biased. Ohio State, after losing to Oregon, they fixed the defense. The defense is the best in the country right now. Like I've been saying, there's a chance coming out of this Michigan game they fix the offense. I mean, there is that could happen. Um, they get, I think, a week or 2 off. They don't have to play in the Big Ten championship game. It's looking like they're gonna get a home game against Tennessee. I think against Tennessee, I don't know. I think that would be a very low scoring game. But at home, I kind of like their chances. So with Ohio State, huge loss, obviously. But there is some silver linings. And this is not a positive. Losing to Michigan is no positive at all. I'm just trying to think of any potential positives here because this is just a heartbreaker. But let's move on. I talked enough about the Buckeyes. They are just my favorite team. I had to go on a little bit of a rant. With Georgia, they survive against Georgia Tech. If they lost that game, they, well, I'll say, if they lost that game, there's still a chance they could have made the playoffs because they had already clinched the SEC championship game berth. Um, but obviously that's huge for them to win this game. Now it's pretty much guaranteed they're going to be in the playoffs. They're all the way up to number 5. Now they play Texas for a second time. I said again in the Mountain West Championship prediction that usually when a good team plays another good team, whoever won the first time ends up losing the second time. I will go with that logic here. This is going to be on a neutral site. At this point, I just can't trust Carson Beck in the big one. I know they looked really good against Tennessee. Maybe they figured it out, but it wasn't promising what they did against Georgia Tech. It took them 8 overtimes, the second longest game in college football history. I think Texas gets them. I don't know. Again, Georgia did go in there and dominate them. So maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think Texas figures it out. I don't think they turn the ball over nearly enough. Texas's defense is looking like a top 3 in the country, top 3 defense in the country. I think they can turn over Carson Beck more than one time, if I'm being honest. And I think Texas wins. I think Texas gets it done, but I could be very wrong. This is probably the hardest championship game to predict. I've been saying the other ones are 50-50. This one, I think, will probably be the best overall football game. It is, again, 50-50, and, there's a strong argument for Georgia. I'm going to go Texas, though. Notre Dame at 4, they're pretty much locked and loaded here in the playoffs. I mean, they don't play another game, so they're going to be in the playoffs. The question for them is where will they be? Right now they're seated at the 6th seed. I think, though, there's a good chance they get the 5 seed. If Oregon beats Penn State, they'll move into the 5. Now, if Oregon beats Penn State, if Penn State beats Oregon, then there's a chance Oregon drops to 5. I think that's a very real possibility. If Georgia beats Texas, do they put a 2-loss Texas ahead of Notre Dame? Maybe. So Notre Dame is probably going to be either the 5 or the 6 seed. Now, if Penn State beats Oregon and Georgia beats Texas, Notre Dame, I guess, could move to 7. But I don't know. They're probably at either 5 or 6. And that's a very good spot to be in. So with Notre Dame, I think you got to be excited. You're playing your best football right now. The defense looks like, besides Ohio State, probably the best defense in the country. 2 pick sixes against USC. Jeremiah Love, the running back, looks like an absolute monster. So Notre Dame playing their best football at the right time. And last but not least, the Big Ten championship game. Penn State survives against Minnesota. That was a crazy game. They got it done, though. They're 11-1. They're playing in the Big Ten championship game. All these teams at this point are locked in into the playoffs, whether they lose or win their conference championship game. I think Oregon is going to win, though. I think they're just the better team. Oregon beat Ohio State. Penn State lost to Ohio State. That's kind of just a common opponent. Now, obviously, that's not the full story. I mean, I don't know. I just can't trust Penn State's offense. I know. I don't see a world where they can keep up with Oregon's offense. I know their defense is very solid. Abdul Carter's probably going to be a top 10 draft pick, but Oregon's offensive line looks really good. Oregon just in general. I think I got to go with the Ducks here. They are just clear-cut number 1 team, in my opinion, right now. Number 2, I have Texas. They got the huge win against A&M, much needed. They went in there, got it done. Ugly game, but they won. Now they play Georgia, and I do think they win. There's a chance Georgia beats them a second time. It's hard for me to pick. When 2 good teams play each other, it's hard to beat a good team twice, no matter who you are. I think Texas, most would agree, is a good team, so I think Texas wins the second time around. But again, I could be wrong. Kirby Smart is the best coach in the country. Maybe he's got something up his sleeve. He probably does. Georgia, there's a good chance Georgia wins the SEC. And if they do, they'd get the 2 seed. If Texas loses, where would they fall? That's the question. It depends what happens with Oregon Penn State. let's assume Oregon wins. Texas probably falls to either 5 or 6. Well, not probably. They would fall to either 5 or 6. I would assume 6. I would assume Notre Dame with one loss would be ahead of Texas in the rankings. Maybe not though. I don't know if now that I'm thinking about it though, if Penn State beats Oregon, Georgia beats Texas, then Penn State could be then Oregon could be 5, Notre Dame could be 6, Texas could be 7. I don't know. Texas has a whole lot of possibilities here depending on this game. Another thing I just thought of, well, let's move on. Another thing I just thought of is if Oregon goes out, beats Penn State, hands Penn State their second loss, does Penn State then fall behind Ohio State because they would have the same number of losses and Ohio State beat them? And I'd argue Ohio State with 2 top 10 wins compared to Penn State with 0 has the better resume and the head-to-head win. I know they have another lot. Well, sorry, they have the same number of losses. I know they have one less win. But would that be enough? Could that give Ohio State the 7 potentially and put Ohio State up against Indiana in the first round again? That could be very interesting. I do think Oregon wins though, so we'll see. We'll have a video come out next Tuesday reacting to all the conference championship games as well as our reaction to the committee's bracket. So I won't have my rankings. So unfortunately, this is going to be the last top 25 ranking video of the year, but like I said, we're not going to be short of college football content. We're going to make our reaction video. We're going to make our playoff prediction video. That should be very fun. But with all that being said, it was a great regular season. We're moving on into conference championship weeks. Very exciting with the playoffs right around the corner. If you're new around here, make sure you subscribe. We're going to have a whole lot of playoff content, like I said. Not only do we do college football, though, college basketball every Mondays, NFL every Wednesdays, and NBA every Thursdays, as well as MLB content. So if any of that interests you, make sure you go on there, subscribe, hit the notifications to make sure you don't miss whenever we post. Like this video if you enjoyed. Links in the description. As always, X, Twitch, TikTok, Discord. Make sure you follow those, join those. Make sure you check out the videos popping up on the screen right now, 2 most recent videos. But with all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys tomorrow with our Week 14 NFL game predictions. Make sure you tune in to that one.